Hey everyone, it's Lisa here from the podcast, Her Healing Hour. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it's free. Number two, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your mobile phone or your computer. Number three, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. Number four, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Number five, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the Anchor free app right now or go to anchor.fm to get started. Bye. Move. It will help. Welcome back, everyone. This is my 5th week of my new podcast titled Her Healing Hour, and I'm your host, Lisa, aka the AlkaliYogi. Who am I? I'm a certified holistic lifestyle coach with the Czech Institute and a certified yoga teacher with many hours of teacher training, and in fact, I'm currently getting many more. I am always a student before I am a teacher. And if you want to practice with me, well, for the month of February in this here year of 2021, every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be guiding a free yin yoga class on alkaline yoga retreats. Again, that's alkaline yoga retreats. It's spelled exactly as it sounds. And if you come to our page, you'll also see that we are hosting 3 upcoming wellness retreats at Usha Village, home to Dr. Sebi. Once again, you can stay posted on those dates by staying posted on Alkaline Yoga Retreats. So, for those of you that are here for the very first time today, first let me say welcome. I'm so happy that you found us, or me, but you found a space. And I want to tell you why I created this space. I myself am on my own healing journey, and I wanted to reclaim some of my own power, as per Maxine Waters. As I'm observing the current zeitgeist, I couldn't help but notice that we as members of the human race have given away a lot of our own power. And we're so depleted and confused that it's gotten to a point where we're really happy to find answers for ourselves everywhere else but ourselves. And maybe we've even lost a little bit of confidence in our own ability to make good decisions for ourselves. But honestly, we did not come here to experience life on the sidelines where we are told what to do in every aspect. This is a time and a process of self-discovery, after all. I was recently listening to another wonderful podcast, and it reminded me that the system that we know here to be in the West, well, it's actually very patriarchal and ego-driven. I'm sure that this statement doesn't surprise many people because we know it to be true. We just don't really think about it or ponder or contemplate on it, rather, very often, do we? But we have been very keen to listen to men, and oftentimes they're men that are wearing white coats. This podcast pointed this out as well, which I thought was quite interesting. You know, whether they're religious leaders or medical professionals, we're very happy to disempower our own intuition and take and heed the advice of these men who happen to wear these white coats. But we have our own hearts and our own bodies. And so no one can know the truth of our own hearts and our own bodies outside of us. Now, I'm not saying that other people can't contribute to our healing journey. I'm just saying that we should, again, be active participants on the journey. For instance, you know, when you look at childbirth, you know, it was a man or men that decided that the umbilical cord had to be cut virtually the minute after the baby was born. But this is depriving the baby of, you know, nutrients and or blood and or food that is still being transferred, not to mention energy, through the umbilical cord. And why does a baby have to be washed immediately after exiting the womb, removing an important sheath that is actually really good for the baby? You know, the entire process of childbirth is magical. But because we have allowed men and their egos to centralize this process, they've made it a very technical one with many invasive procedures that are not even needed or conducive to the health of baby or mom. Why would we trust a man that cannot experience and therefore walk in the truth of motherhood or even the journey to motherhood, who can turn around and tell us that formula is just as good, if not better, than breast milk? For me, I just thought it didn't make sense. I don't care how much purchase science there is out there. And I do say purchase because understand that science is not free from man's greed. And in fact, many notable scientists have come forward admitting that most studies, and I use air quotes around studies, are funded by big pharma for the purpose of validating their own products and in order to benefit their own bottom line. If you don't believe me, look up Dr. Marsha Engel. It might be Angel. Forgive me if I mispronounce her name. She's the first woman physician to serve as the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine. Currently, she's a senior lecturer at the Department of Global Health and Social Medicine at Harvard Medical School. You may be familiar with that school. In 2009, in an article she wrote, and the article is called "Drug Companies and Doctors, A Story of Corruption." She wrote, "Similar conflicts of interest and biases exist in virtually every field of medicine, particularly those that rely heavily on drugs and devices. It is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published, or to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines. I take no pleasure in this conclusion, which I reached slowly and reluctantly over my 2 decades as an editor of the New England Journal of Medicine." I mean, the proof is kind of in the pudding, I'm going to read you another one of her quotes. In 2004, in the article, "The Truth About the Drug Companies," she wrote, "The combined profits for the 10 drug companies in the Fortune 500 were more than the profits of all other 490 businesses put together. Over the past 2 decades, the pharmaceutical industry has moved very far from its original high purpose of discovering and producing useful drugs. Now primarily a marketing machine to sell drugs of dubious benefit, this industry uses its wealth and power to co-opt every institution that might stand in its way, including the U.S. Congress, the FDA, academic medical centers, and medical professions itself, and the medical profession itself. Most of the marketing efforts are focused on influencing doctors since they must write the prescriptions. If prescription drugs were like ordinary consumer goods, all this might not matter very much, but drugs are different. People depend on them for their health and even their lives. In the words of Senator Debbie Stabenow from Michigan State, it's not like buying a car or tennis or peanut butter. Tennis shoes rather, or peanut butter. People need to know that there are some checks and balances in this industry so that its quest for profits doesn't push every other consideration aside, but there aren't such checks and balances." Something to think about, right? My point is, because I know I have digressed, my point is this, guys. Nature is perfect. She did not leave us wanting, which is why Big Pharma bases their drugs off of proven ancient natural cures found in nature and used by ancient traditions. The problem is this: the stuff that comes out of labs is not only missing nature's wisdom, it just does not integrate into the body well. In fact, it causes many side effects. And we know this to be true because we hear these long disclaimers that have to be read to us anytime pharma is advertising to us. Anything that is consumed which is synthetic in the form of supplements, vitamins, medical drugs will not bring health back to the body. It won't. It might curb some symptoms. It might apply a band-aid solution, but because it cannot effectively and harmoniously integrate into the body, it can't heal you. Even if you're not aware of it, because the body is so forgiving, you're experiencing side effects from anything that you're consuming that is synthetic. And if we undo the conditioning of the society and the sick care system, then we can reconnect to the innate connection that we have to nature, to our ancestors. Only then might we even have the slightest chance at making a more informed decision with ourselves. Again, I'm not negating Western medicine. All I'm saying is they should work together in conjunction with the already built-in system of self-healing that we have, that Mother Nature equipped us with. The body is designed to heal itself. It just needs help. Another reason why I want to ask you to be wary of all science studies that come out, especially the ones that are not independent or financed by Big Pharma, is because the truth is, we have never, ever been sicker, mentally and physically. If you're not familiar with Mercola.com, I highly recommend it. This is a website I've referred to for over a decade. There was an interesting article that is currently on Mercola.com and was actually quoted by another podcast that I was listening to. And on Mercola.com, an independent study has found that ADHD in children has increased over 800%. Autism has increased by nearly 3,000%. And the number of children that are now bipolar has gone up by over 10,000% in only the last 30 years. In only the last 30 years. This is what happens when we give our power away and we allow for an ancient system that's patriarchal and ego-driven in nature to tell us what we should do with our own health and our own well-being. This is not an us versus them. This is, can we find some balance, a medium, a way to come together and work together in coming to, in finding a solution to restore health and well-being for as many people on the planet. And that's really why I have created this space. Because right now things are out of balance and we are being told what to do by people who have allowed for greed to take over whatever their intentions might have been at the beginning. That's just the reality that we're living in right now. My only hope here is that you find something helpful that you can utilize, or maybe even something that you want to contribute to in this space that can be utilized by others. So that's why I'm doing the show. Speaking of the show, let's get back into it, shall we? Movement. That is the topic today. Let's get into it. Now, as I've stated numerous times, if you've been listening to the previous episodes, there are 6 foundational principles to wellness, and they include hydration, nutrition, sleep, thoughts, movement, and breath. Today we're covering the movement principle, and next week we'll be covering breath. So, why move? Is it as simple as use it or lose it? Yeah, in some ways. There's a little bit more though. Movement in the body, it brings balance back not only to the body, but also to emotions and to the mind. So we do it for a host of different benefits. And as per usual, there are movements, postures, and shapes that benefit you in different ways and at different times. Looping in once again, yin and yang, variables. There are, in fact, yin movements and yang movements. Some people prefer to say yang. I like to alternate. So there's a time and a place for yin and yang considerations, even within choosing when, how, and the time to move. How's that for something new to ponder? It's more of what we already know, that everything is connected, and it informs us what we need and when we need it if we take the time to learn and translate the language of the body. For example, if you're feeling in the body quite anxious and antsy, you're already in a more yang state. So what your body and mind need here is more yin movement to restore balance. On the reverse side, if you're feeling down and lethargic, you're already in a more yin state. So to reinstate balance, you may want to seek more yang postures and shapes. And for my gym buffs, bodybuilders out there who are maybe not familiar with yin and yang, you might call them anabolic exercises or catabolic exercises. Anabolic movement is tissue building and restorative, whilst catabolic is tissue disruptive. Both are needed, both are important, right? It's not ever either or, it's functional, it's complementary, right? You need opposites. The amount of anabolic yin movement to catabolic yang movement that you need on any given day is going to be determined by a host of things, such as the state of your body, which changes daily, the state of your emotions, which changes daily, your feelings, which change daily, and even the time of day. So in very general terms, yang catabolic movement, and this is generalized, one could say is better suited earlier in the day so that you can come down from that release of cortisol after strenuous exercise that could actually keep you up late if you did it too close to bedtime. Aerobic exercise, for instance, would be considered yang, right? But the problem with yang exercises, not that there is a problem, it just really depends on when you're doing it and if that's what your body is needing, right? Is that anabolic or aerobic exercises, they tend to flood the body with high levels of stress and cortisol, which is good. You need a certain amount of stress. But over time, this can lead to adrenal fatigue if that's all you're doing. If this is the only kind of movement that you're really exposing your body to, then it could lead to adrenal fatigue. And many people have adrenal fatigue and don't even know it. Just a couple of symptoms that are related to adrenal fatigue are a weakened immune system, experiencing chronic fatigue. How many of us are experiencing that? Overuse of stimulants, again, very common. Inability to handle stress, that would be me. And difficulty getting up in the morning, right? So many of us are probably experiencing some level of adrenal fatigue. Now, let me be clear. There is no right or wrong. What I'm saying is reflect on the frequency and the time of day that you're partaking in catabolic, yang, i.e. aerobic exercises. Because, for example, if you let's say that you're cycling for 60 minutes, this will add 60 minutes of cortisol to the body. And depending on whatever state you're in mentally, emotionally, this might not be what the body is needing. It might not need cortisol. Not to mention that aerobic exercise, well, it's not as effective as weight training, if I'm being honest. I prefer weight training, not only as a holistic lifestyle coach, but just as a lay person, because I find it to be more effective, but also I know that it offsets the density lost in our bones as we age. And for women who happen to be more susceptible to osteoporosis, this is something that we have to be very aware of. Again, I'm not saying avoid aerobic exercise. It's just about being aware of a deficiency, if there is one, in your styles of movement, right? Rotation and variety, like everything else in life, is a nice little spice, right? And then to continue on, I would also say that don't allow for yourself to get seduced by the latest and oftentimes most expensive trends when choosing how you want to move your body. Because the truth is, treadmills and stationary bikes, they don't actually add functional strength because they're not mimicking your real life. And actually, these kinds of exercises performed on machines can actually and often do lead to injuries. More desirable ways to exercise would be to use like free weights or kettle weights, Swiss balls, medicine balls, lifting your own body weight. These are things that you can then apply to your real life because you will often move in such ways, i.e. picking things up or pulling things down, moving them across the body or the torso, but without the rigidness of a machine, right? Because that wouldn't happen in real life. So these kinds of movements that you could do with a kettlebell or free weights, they're more favorable because they're more in the likeness of what you would do in real life. In a society also that's already riddled with so much stress and poor sleep and a very fragile immune system, I don't think we need more stress, which is why I'm hesitant and reluctant to tell anyone who's listening that they need more yang or more working out exercises. You know what I mean? You need to put back as much as you are taking out. And that's where work in exercises come in. So what are work in exercises or yin exercises? Well, you can tell that they're yin or work in exercises, or as Paul Chek calls them, zone exercises, these are movements that don't elevate the heart rate. And they actually give you the time and the space to improve your respiratory rate. Work in exercises are slower in movement, yes, and may or may not be held for a very long period of time. But either way, they're challenging, and they're a great way to measure results. Did you know that moving slower actually takes more presence, more control, more strength, and more breath? So don't think for a second that you're not doing as much for your body, or you're not exercising or challenging your body, because you are. What you cultivate in return when you're able to be more present, utilize more control, self-control, apply more strength and build more strength and work on the breath, is you get more confidence. You are creating more space in the body. And you create flexibility, or you increase flexibility. And for me personally, I find I create more peace. In many ways, yeah, it is more challenging because we are accustomed to work, produce results, have little awareness of what's going on, just kind of get through it, push through it, power through it. Not really paying attention to what's happening to us physically, mentally, and emotionally, just kind of pushing through. But when you slow things down and you learn to move slow, that takes control. It takes discipline. It takes focus on breath work. And you're automatically forced to go within to observe and experience the effects on your body, mind, and emotions. Which is why I say that it's more, in some ways, more rewarding and can build your confidence level as well. And you ask anyone who's extremely strong and fit, whether it be Paul Chek or in my case, the studio owner of the yoga studio that I teach at, and they will all tell you that most of their strength was cultivated in the slow work, in the Tai Chi, in the Qigong, in the stretching. That's not what's marketed to us, but that's what really gets you results. And let's not forget that the benefits of yin or slow movement, slow work in movement, let's call it work in movement, that has transcended thousands of years of observation, if you will, and is still being practiced by many ancient traditions today. That's why we still have Qigong. That's why we still have Tai Chi. That's why yoga is everywhere. So don't overlook the healing that comes from working in just because it's not marketed the same way as working out exercises are. And there's a simple reason for that. It's not marketed because they cannot market something that they can't sell to you. And the truth is, you don't need equipment to stretch, to practice yoga, to practice qigong and tai chi. And so if they can't make money off of it, they're not going to push it. It's not going to be a part of the agenda. But anyone that's wise and in the know will tell you, you need both. And the key is knowing when to move in what way by going within yourself. And the other great thing about working in, or these unmarketable yin type postures and shapes, is that they can go with you anywhere, and you can practice them anytime and without anyone. You know, it becomes truly yours because all you need is your body, your presence, and your time. So the $1 million question might be how and when to exercise. Well, again, you know my approach here. There's not a one size fits all because we're not all one size. So yeah, I'm going to put the onus back on you like I always do, because like everything else, when you're looking for holistic health, you have to be an active participant. I can help you to assess and create something that's unique to help target your specific challenges, but you need to be as present as whomever you're consulting and have your own input in order to get an output. Meaning I'm not here to sell you on anything. You know, all I'm saying is that your own healing, it requires your full attention and intention. But I won't come off without giving you some tools to kind of work with and help you on your way. As a very basic outline to get you on your way, I'll share with you what I've learned. If you're not on a current training program and you're wanting to begin, I would say prioritize energy cultivation first. Get your engine going. And that takes time, because if you haven't been active, you're probably not feeling very energetic. So give yourself that grace and that time. And then I would move into incorporating stretching daily. Stretching different parts and spending long and holding those stretches for an extended period of time to slowly open the body up, to get into the connective tissue, to release pressure, and to stabilize the joints. In turn, you'll get greater mobility and range of motion, but it takes time. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Rest in power, Nipsey Hussle. Then move on to restoring the core. And I say restore because if you've ever watched a baby, they have this insane core strength that allows for them to hold themselves completely upright, like a perfect L shape, even before they're walking. You know, they've just barely gotten a grip on their neck, but their belly and their core is so tight and so firm. And that's important because oftentimes we lose that with the sedentary lifestyles that we're living. And without a strong core, all of the slave joints, meaning anything under the C2, so your cervical spine, C2, so that would be the second vertebrae in the cervical spine. Anything under that becomes unstable when the core is not strong. And your slave joints is everything underneath that. So we're talking your wrists, your ankles, your knees, your hips. That's a lot of joints to have instability in, right? Don't play with that. That's how injuries, chronic pain, that's how those things happen. Once you've worked on the core, only then should you really get into the hardy workout stuff, you know? This is when you can really start to play with building that functional strength. So now you can get into weightlifting, you can get into more like power moves. Let me take a moment here and define functional strength for you as I've defined it, so that you understand. To me, functional strength is strength that can be built up, that you can use to the benefit of your day-to-day life. Meaning, it will help you improve your ability to complete your daily tasks and responsibilities whilst reducing the chance of injury whilst performing those tasks and duties. Which is why sitting at a machine, when we already sit plenty, and practicing, let's say, leg extensions, that doesn't apply to your life any more than if you were lying on your back and doing a leg press. When does that happen in your life? We have allowed for these machines to become a multi-billion-dollar industry, but actually these types of movements in the gym that are often marketed to us as beneficial, we just don't replicate them in real life. And so they're not actually adding functional strength that you can use. So that's my definition. Now, the kind of training that does imitate your real life would be things like jogging, running, squatting, bending, lunging, twisting, pushing, pulling, gait, and shoot, I'll even throw in twerking, if that's your thing. These are the kinds of things that you do on a daily basis. So once you've worked on, the core, and once you've done the stretching and you've cultivated the energy, then you can start to practice exercises that are building that functional strength so that you have the ability to get through your day with the most efficiency, the most ease, and the least chance at injury. And that is important because that improves your life. That directly impacts the quality of your life. Lastly, I just want to say, the interconnectedness of our mind, body, and spirit should not ever be negated. The right movement can and will help also ease a troubled mind. Speaking as someone who has suffered from debilitating depression and anxiety, what I know to be true is that being inactive is the worst thing for you. If you're physically able to move, then being inactive is the worst thing for you. If you look at the word emotion, when you break it down, it literally means energy in motion. And when you're experiencing depression and anxiety, this is a form of blocked energy. Intentional and effective movement to the body can release some of that energy, can move some of that energy. And it won't take away your depression and anxiety. I'm not going to say it's a snap your fingers and it's gone. But what it will help to do is it will lessen the intensity of those emotions significantly and might buy you a little bit of respite. Is it respite? I always forget if it's respite or respite. Anyways, you know what I mean. Because honestly, when was the last time you heard anyone say, man, I wish I'd stayed at home or on the couch? I feel worse now that I've taken a long walk, now that I have gone for a run, or have taken a yoga class or a weightlifting session. You don't hear that because when you move, you just naturally feel better. Things have to stay in motion. Just like water goes rancid and stank. If it sits and it's not moving, it's the same thing in your body. You have to keep it moving. Trust me, it'll help. And it facilitates the movement of energy through the chakras. So that's another bonus, right? Anyways, I'm going to leave it here for today. Until next time, don't forget to reach out, comment, question, amend, or contribute to this very conversation. And you can do so by reaching out to me on my medias. I'm the AlkaliYogi, or via email. You can send them to me at AlkaliYogi@yahoo.com, spelled AlkaliYogi@yahoo.com. Thank you so much, guys, for your ear, your time, attention, and intention. Until next week, I am signing off. Good night.